I'm going to show you how to replace this flush flapper seal on more modern toilets. Now, modern toilets they've developed in a lot of new ways. It used to be on an old toilet; they all had the same flush valve, and you just buy the kit at the hardware store and replace it. On these newer toilets, where they've tried to develop new technology to recover some of the flushing ability of the old toilets, the larger tanks, they've changed designs a couple times trying to improve flush quality. But anyway, this is the Korky kit right here. This describes on the back the specific model numbers that are covered with this kit. And there you'll look, well, I'll show you here in a minute, but you'll look for your model number inside the tank. In fact, we'll go to that here in just a minute. This is the directions from American Standard as well as their kit number for the factory American Standard replacement kit. As you're ordering this, a lot of times you'll just search in eBay or Amazon for that kit number, and it will bring up all the alternatives. There's your Korky kit number for these sets of models here. But we're going to cut to the inside of the tank. Here we are at the toilet. I got the tank lid already off the back of the toilet. Here you can see your model number. This is a really common model sold at Home Depot and other places. Here's where we're going to start at. There's your flush arm right here. We're going to start at the top, and we're going to remove this cotter pin out. I'm going to use some needle nose pliers because that's a tiny pin. I don't have the dexterity to do it with my fingers. It might not be a bad idea to have a magnet around in case you drop that so you can pick it up. And then this pin here will slide out once we remove that cotter pin, and we'll separate the chain from the flush arm. Now, you can do this while the water's still running. It really doesn't take that long to change it, but if you can shut your water off, now's a good time to do it. Most of the older ones, there'll be a valve here that you'll turn clockwise to turn the water supply off. Now, if you've got an older one, you'll have to screw it in a couple turns potentially. And if it's not turning, it's generally best, if you're struggling to turn that valve, to just leave it running for a job like this, because you'll risk, if you put a big wrench on it, you'll risk damaging the valve, and then you'll have to call a plumber to get things fixed. So if you can't turn this off at the toilet, I wouldn't turn it off. I'd just work with the water running. Now this is a more modern one, more modern valve. So this is only a quarter turn. When the arm of this lever here is in line with the hose, the water is on. When it's perpendicular to the water line, that's when the water is off. So we can come up here and empty this tank, and then we won't have to work in water anymore. You can see this water's not refilling because we've got the water supply off. Now I'll come back to you after we've separated this chain from the flush arm. So I've removed our little cotter pin with the needle nose pliers. Now we can take this brass pin out, and it's not attached to the chain, so be careful with it. Don't drop it, and you won't be able to fish it out with a magnet because it's brass. So we'll set that somewhere safe up here with our cotter pin. Now our chain's broken loose, and we will turn this. I've already loosened this up, so you'll turn this counterclockwise, and then we'll be able to remove the cap and get to both seals. There's two seals in this kit. The big red one, of course, will go where you can see the edges of that opaque white one. And then there's a little O-ring in here that will actually go on this black piece. You can see where red is sticking out. That's the old one in there because I've already loosened this up. Normally you won't be able to see that. So you'll have to get this started probably with a pair of pliers, and then untighten this guy. I'll just show you here. No need to pause the video from here, I guess. Unscrew that. So we'll pull this red O-ring out with a pick and replace it with this black one here. And then we can lift off this green cap and expose our big O-ring. So we'll replace that with our new red one, and then put a new seal in here, and then we'll put everything back together. All right, we'll drop our red seal in place, put our cap back on, we also need to replace this O-ring here. To get this O-ring out, you're going to want to use a pick. You know, if you have a dental pick, that would work pretty well. Or a paper clip you can stretch out and work up underneath that. You will have to be careful with that, though, because if you damage the plastic that's underneath it, it's not going to seal very well. In some cases, if you struggle with that, it might be advisable just to leave this O-ring in, because this is the least likely culprit to your leaky toilet. However, it's not terribly dangerous unless you really struggle with dexterity to replace that O-ring. Getting the new one on will be easier than removing the old one without damaging the plastic. But I'm going to show you how to do that. I might just use a paper clip even though I have a pick here, because I'm assuming some of you may not have those tools. Alright, I couldn't find a darn paper clip. Tripping over the things when I'm not looking for one. But now I need one to show you guys. Couldn't find one. So anyway, this is a really simple process. You could probably figure it out, but I'm showing in case somebody really doesn't know. So you just have to get under it and hook it with something without damaging the plastic. And of course, to put the new one on is really easy. You'll just roll it in from here. You'll probably want to lube it up with some water or dish soap or something. You get some suds in your toilet if you use too much dish soap, but if it's not cooperating, just get some lube on it and it'll stretch in place. Make sure it gets all the way into that groove. Make sure it's in that groove all the way around. Alright, we'll go back to the toilet. Okay, time to screw this guy back in. You can see you may not be able to see that. It's threaded on the inside, and that's where it's going to thread onto this rod down here. You're going to want to get it wet for sure on this step, even if you didn't have to get it onto this. So dip it in the water, line it up with this rod, screw it in, and then before everything gets tight, make sure your red seal is also lined up correctly. I'm going to need 2 hands for this, so I'm going to turn the camera off. But get everything lined up, and then right before it gets tight, make sure everything's lined up correctly. Like, you don't want this red seal stretched way out of the way and not lined up even with this bottom plastic piece. It kind of also needs to be lined up in there too. So make sure all that's lined up before you cinch everything down. Actually, there's a safety feature on here to keep this from over tightening and to keep it from unwinding on its own that I didn't notice before. So you can see those little marks there where the wings of that black part engage, and as you get it pretty close to tight, you'll feel it starting to drag over the top of those, and you're going to hit a point where it's too difficult to tighten, and you're hitting the stops on that little lip there on the green piece. Okay, mostly everything's back in position. We've got our little brass pin run back through the chain. We got to line it up with our hole here. And then put our pin in. I'm going to try and do this one-handed here without the pair of pliers. Turn that into position first. Alright, that's in place. Turn our water back on. Wait for it to fill up, and then we'll check and see if it seals. Okay, ready to put the lid back on. Looks like everything's sealing. One thing you might have to do the first time, this red seal is all dry and may not settle in on the first fill up of the water. You might have to get kind of things wet and push on it a little bit and work it in place. Uh, Obviously, you shouldn't have to do too much of that because it's going to have to settle in naturally on this next flush, like this. But sometimes you do have to get it wet first before it will seal. While it's dry, it doesn't lay down like it's supposed to. But you can see it's working now. So anyway, hope this was helpful. Hopefully it works for you.